What's up, filmmakers? Today I'm going to show you some behind the scene footage from a recent fight scene we shot, and then I'll show you all the gear we used to make it happen. First off, if you haven't seen the fight scene yet, pause this video and then click on the card above and go watch it so you know what we're talking about. So this was my first time ever shooting an action scene before, where there was actual fighting and people punching each other. So this was a totally new learning experience with me trying to figure out the techniques to make it work. And it was new for my actors as well. Neither of them had ever done any actual fighting before either. I want to share with you guys my experience and what I learned from this. You know, the things that worked, the things that didn't work, and the mistakes that you should avoid, so that when you go out to shoot your own action scene, you know, in the future, you're gonna have a much better idea of what to expect. I shot this with a really small crew. Honestly, it was just me and one of my filmmaking buddies, Tyler. We went out to the location, which was actually just freeway underpass, and I was pretty worried about how the sound would be, because obviously, you know, filming under a freeway, you expect to hear like a ton of cars and noises and everything like that, but surprisingly, it was actually a pretty quiet spot. The first thing I do when I get on location is start looking around at all the different angles with my camera, where's the light coming from, all that kind of stuff. And so once we had that first angle set up for our first scene, we started shooting, and honestly, our biggest mistake was that we spent way too much time on just the first scene. That's kind of a mistake that a lot of us make when we go out and start shooting, is that we think, oh, I have so much time, it's the beginning of the day, and you're kind of taking things slow, setting up, really being methodical about it, and maybe you're getting creative and trying all different angles, and you realize like, whoa, we just burned like an hour on this tiny little sequence. So that was like honestly a big mistake that we made on this, is we should have just been, you know, keeping on pace and said, you know what, that's good, we got the shot, let's move on. After we shot the opening sequence, we moved on to the dialogue scene where the guard and our hero have a little conversation. And at this point, I already knew that we were going to be running out of time. And honestly, we just didn't take enough takes on this dialogue scene. We really only did 3 or 4 takes on each of our actors. In the future, I would have planned way more time for this so we could get the absolute best and most believable performance possible. After we finished shooting the dialogue scene, it was time to move on to the action sequence, which honestly was the part that we were the most excited to do, and we left the least amount of time for. Honestly, we probably spent about an hour on it because we were just chasing that sun, and that started to really mess with our continuity because shadows and light was really changing in our scene. So let's talk about the punches and hits and everything like that, and what works and what doesn't work. When you're shooting a fight scene where one character is punching or hitting another character, this is really just a big dance between the two characters and the camera. If all those things don't come together, it just does not sell and does not look realistic. The first thing is that the person, the attacker that's actually hitting, now of course they're not going to hit the other person. You should not be hitting the other people. Even stunt artists aren't always hitting the other person. A lot of times they're not making contact at all. It's all about, you know, making it look realistic, doing big motions, not these little tight, you know, hitting motions, but actually big swings and kind of over dramatizing it. The thing for the person getting hit, they also need to over dramatize their hits as well. So when they're getting smacked, they're really kind of selling it and moving their whole body and not just like turning. And that's something we really had to practice, was really making it look like you're getting hit and kind of giving that recoil to your body so it looks like, oh, I got hit, and you're kind of bouncing back. If you just, it doesn't look realistic. There's going to be some recoil to it. So, you know, timing that up right is pretty difficult to do. You know, unless you have a lot of time to practice with those two actors, it can be pretty difficult to nail. Either, you know, you're swinging and they're reacting too late, or they're reacting too soon, and then it's like, wait, why'd they turn their head? They haven't even been hit yet. You know, doesn't make a lot of sense. So you want to make sure you have ample time to practice this, especially before the shoot. That'd be the best thing to do. You also really got to nail your angles, because if you put that camera to the side and they're not making contact, like obviously, it's gonna look ridiculous because there's like a huge gap between them. So you have to angle the camera in such a way that they call it stacking. So it looks like from your angle that their fist, you know, is maybe hitting that person's head because their fist is behind their head and you can't see it. And then your camera is behind that actor that's getting hit's head. It sells it more because you can't exactly see what's happening. You don't see that initial contact. When it happens really quickly, it looks like. Another technique that I used and found to work pretty well was actually adding some shake or motion in the camera. So when someone's punching another person, you can kind of move with that hit. Adding that little bit of shake and motion does a lot to really sell the hit. Now that moves me into the next part of this video, which is where I want to talk about the gear that we use to pull all these different shots off. First thing that I want to talk about is actually my shoulder rig. This is perfect for shooting action. So instead of being completely handheld, you get just a lot more stabilization, so you can get into a position where you could be pretty steady, but you can also add just a ton of that shake to it if you want to. I also want to talk about this V-mount battery on the back, and I used this for the entire shoot when I was handheld and using the shoulder rig. When you're out there shooting all day long, it's really nice to not have to worry about battery life at all. You don't have to worry about this tiny little Sony NPF batteries and swapping out a bazillion of them. It has a little indicator on there for how much battery life is left. Yeah, it's still full. This is the battery that I used to shoot on, and it's still completely full, at least according to the LED indicators. That's pretty amazing. Now, quick disclaimer, they're not paying me to say any of this. Hashtag not sponsored. I actually bought a couple of these batteries myself, and I've really been loving them. So they sent me a few more to test out with this new charging station where you can actually put 2 V-mount batteries on it at once to get them all charged up. So if you are interested in them, definitely check out the link in the description below. So for that first scene, we were all on my shark slider on a tripod and keeping things really smooth because the guard was just hanging out, you know, eating some sunflower seeds. But then as things start to kind of pick up, my friend Tyler suggested that, hey, let's go all on the Ronin for this to just add a little bit more motion and make it a little more dynamic. And then you can see as soon as he goes to tackle the guy, boom, everything goes into the shoulder rig and it starts to get really shaky and the camera comes alive and you can really feel that action, what's happening, the punches, the hits. You can just really tell a difference between, you know, the opening act, the middle, and then the final climax in the end, is that by adding those different camera movements and techniques, it really adds to the story as well. Finally, I want to talk about post-production for this real quick. When you're doing a fight scene, you gotta add some sound effects, because if you don't add in those punches and hits and everything like that, it just does not sell well on screen. Now, I did find a bunch of free sound effects online that I could use for punches and hits and everything like that. And you could tell that they don't sound super realistic, but next time I would definitely buy or make my own really good hit sounds. Don't be afraid to get out there and shoot and try new things. Like I said, this was the first time for me actually shooting like a fighting sequence, and for the actors as well. But we learned so much, and so next time we go out, we're gonna be just that much better, and we're gonna learn a lot more then as well. Guys, if you wanna learn how to light and shoot better videos, hit subscribe right now. I have so many more videos coming out on shooting, editing, everything like that. All right, I'll see you guys in the next video.